Okay.
All right, fantastic. Thank you, Chris. I would like to call to order the Finance Committee meeting of Tuesday, August 5th. It is 1:02 p.m. and we are live on a digital platform. Present today, as I struggle to call the roll, we have from City Council, Eric Biter, Randy Allison, and myself, Liz Mealy, along with Janice Frank as the city clerk. From the administration, we have Jamie Livermore from finance, Kevin Mackey from the treasurer's office, and from community development, Valerie Fessler, Austin Daly, and Scott Williams. Quite the attendance there, guys. You win an award today. Excuse me. Here as a distinguished guest, we have Nicholas Grimes, former treasurer of the city. So I think that about wraps it up. We have 5 items on today's agenda, and I think, Nick, are you here to deal with the LERTA items?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I figured. Jamie, if it's okay with you, I think we're going to move up items 2 and 3 so Nick can get back to fishing here.
Yep, that's fine.
All right, then we'll start with item number 2, an ordinance repealing and reenacting residential LERTA. Scott, looks like you're handling this one.
Yes, I am. So thank you for considering this item. Just want to say, when I started here with the city in April, I took over the application approval process for our LERTA program. And I'll admit, I'm not really a believer in doing things the way they've always been done if I really suspect that there's a more efficient way to do it, right? If we can improve a process, I want to do it.
Right.
So I was looking into like how we were doing our application and approvals for LERTA. And if I could do a little plug for that. So LERTA is our local economic revitalization tax assistance program. That's why we call it LERTA instead of saying that every time. It's a tax abatement program for new construction and improvements to properties. Your taxes won't go down from enrolling in our LERTA program, but you will get tax relief from any improvements or new construction that are done on a property. So, those improvements would typically increase your tax assessment. What the LERTA does is it phases in that increase in assessment over a period of 10 years. So that's how that program works. As I was saying, I did some investigation into our city LERTA ordinances and the state enabling act that allows us to do a LERTA. And I noticed that there were some things that I thought could be streamlined and simplify the application process. We have seen a pretty good usage of LERTA. We've seen some development that's definitely we've at least heard anecdotally, we can definitely tie back to the LERTA being in place. Specifically like Wawa, Chick-fil-A, they've both taken advantage of the LERTA program. So I found ways that I thought we could streamline the process, simplify it, make it easier for property owners to apply for this tax relief. We then took it to the solicitors to look at and verify we could make these changes and draft a new, cleaner, more user-friendly version of the LERTA program. Got to work with Nick Grimes on this. I'm so glad he's able to be here to talk about some of the more technical aspects of this. He did a really excellent job of capturing what we wanted to do with the ordinances to make them work better. So that's what we have for you today. And there's 2 items on the agenda here because one's for the commercial LERTA program, that's one ordinance, and then one for the residential LERTA program, which is a separate ordinance.
Okay. So Nick, do you want to talk about the specific changes we've made?
Sure, I'm happy to. So as Scott said, we have 2 different ordinances here. One's a residential and one's a commercial. There's not any huge changes in this. The zones all stay the same. To change a zone, the city would have to have a public hearing on that. So the LERTA zones have not changed. Some of the language just need cleaned up. There were some technical issues with the ordinances. The most major changes, though, are in regards to fees for the residential LERTA. And then just the process for approval, which I think just through the years of changing and adopting LRDAs, that kind of got wonky. The enabling legislation, and that is a technical term, wonky. The enabling legislation requires that a LRDA application be submitted at the same time as the building permit. Now, the courts have said at the same time can mean up to 30, 60 days later. But our ordinance has read that it was at the time of the occupancy permit, which didn't really make sense because the purpose of LRDA is to encourage development to say, hey, here's a program that can offer you a little bit of reduction on increased taxes to make it financially beneficial for you to do this improvement. Well, if you did it if you submitted your application to say, will you approve me for a LRDA by the time you have the occupancy permit? Well, then your construction's done at that point. So really, it's supposed to happen when you submit your building permit. You're supposed to say, here are my plans to do improvements on my commercial or residential property, and I would like this LRDA abatement to make that financially make sense for me. So they really are supposed to work together. So we've changed the process in a couple ways. One where it gives community and economic development sort of the discretion to make the permit that makes sense without having to go back, or the application that makes sense without having to go back to change the ordinance every time you want to say, well, we need a line to ask for your phone number, or we need a line to ask for this. It's just on a form prescribed by community and economic development. And then the application has to be in within 30 days of the time the building permit's submitted. So instead of saying the occupancy permit, we've changed that back to the building permit. And that's consistent with state law. And Scott, correct me if I'm wrong here, because these changes came from community and economic development. The commercial LRDA we kept at the same application fee. The residential LRDA we actually dropped the application fee out of. I believe that the logic from community and economic development is that for commercial, there's a business aspect to this. They're going to make some money, and any processing cost, for lack of a better term, on the side of the city should be covered by that. The residential, you might spend a couple $100s out of your budget, which is next to nothing just on administrative fees. But we didn't want that to be a barrier for anybody to improve their residential properties or to build new residential properties within the city. I'm going to scroll through. I think you guys, did they get a red line version of the changes, Scott?
I'm not.
I guess somebody.
Did you guys see one?
No, I didn't.
Oh, nope. You're right. We did. It just wasn't it wasn't as the agenda item on here. So, now that I'm scanning down, there were red line versions. Okay. So yeah, Nick, go ahead.
Okay. So the red line versions will give you a better idea of what's changed. There's a lot of small nuance changes, which is why the ordinance, instead of saying we're going to change this one subsection to add this word or remove this word or change this sentence, you guys have gotten a red line version to show all of the different changes. And then the ordinance that you'd be approving itself just says that we're repealing the whole ordinance and reenacting it as follows, so that you don't have to go through and vote on every change or show every change in an ordinance. One of the changes to the commercial is, at one time, I think all three of you were on council, we had the federal opportunity zones that overlaid a lot of our LRDA zones, and we really wanted to use that all to encourage, we called it the opportunity zones in the ordinance, but I believe most of those federal opportunity zones have since gone or will go away. So we kept the same zones, but we've removed the language of the federal opportunity zones just because that terminology may not be accurate. As long as the ordinance is still in effect.
Okay.
There was also a change to the LRDA appeal board, whether you guys knew it or not, and I don't think I knew it. The city has a LRDA appeals board that council can fill. I don't think that council has filled that in my time with the city or since. So what we did is we kept the same process for appeals of LRDA, but we've given the city the opportunity to either appoint a LRDA appeals board, or if there's no LRDA appeals board appointed, then city council just serves as that board to have the hearing if there's if somebody challenges a LRDA.
Okay.
With the pending reassessment, the LRDA ordinance did a good job at saying if your property value is reduced, here's what would happen. But we wanted to capture what happens in the reassessment when property values go way up, but the tax rate goes way down. So really, we just cleaned up some language to say anytime the property value changes, not including new construction, it's still the same proportion of the property that's LRTA.
Got it.
We removed some of the old schedules. The old ordinance would say that if you were approved under a prior schedule, you keep that schedule, and then it had all the schedules back to the 70s, which didn't make sense because they were all gone, and it just made it cumbersome to read and hard to understand why we have 10 different schedules at 10 different years. So we cleaned all that up, only left the ones that were necessary to leave. In the commercial, there was actually a little issue, or the residential, where it said years 0 through 10, you got 100% reduction, and then it went through and showed future years at different rates, which wasn't really accurate. So we cleaned that up as well. And a lot of the rest of it was just moving things around to be consistent with one another ordinance, or making it clear on the deadlines or the processes, but without any substantial changes to how the LRTA ordinance works. And I'm just scrolling down through here to make sure there's nothing else major. Scott, was there any other major changes? Really, it was the application process and then the fee for the residential, and then just cleaning it up to make more sense, that we worked on with the two ordinances.
No, those are all the major things, and I think that that really it is going to make it a lot simpler for us to administer the application approval process by cleaning that up.
Good. Yeah. It looks cleaner and neater, for sure. Eric, Randy, any questions?
I don't have any questions. I appreciate what you've done to streamline everything. And first of all, I'm glad everybody's back on board with LRTA. And no, other than that, that's the only comment I have.
Yeah.
So the question that I have, about 2 years ago when we initially passed the LRTA for the residential and commercial, we had made that citywide. Is that still the case in redoing this?
So the residential LRTA is citywide. The commercial LRTA is still only certain zones of the city.
It's still only certain, and that matches up with what we did before?
Yeah, we didn't change.
Okay.
The
All right.
coverage area.
I couldn't remember if we did them both citywide or not.
Yeah, as Nick said, like that would require doing a new hearing if we
Okay.
change the geographic area. That might be a recommendation that we bring to you in the fall. I'm still looking into that.
Okay.
There definitely are some commercial areas of the city that aren't covered by the LRTA currently. So,
All right.
I think that could be productive in promoting some commercial development in those areas. Because there definitely are some zone commercial areas in the city that are not eligible for LRTA currently.
All right. And then the other question that I have in regards to the county and the school district, are they going to have to approve this as well for this to officially be adopted?
Scott, I'm happy to answer that if you want, because it seems like there was some confusion on that process. So we've heard from a few individuals that they thought that LRTA has to be approved by more than one taxing body, and that's not true. The enabling legislation allows any individual taxing body to approve their own LRTA without any other approvals. Now, where it gets a little confusing is in the process, it's the municipality, so in this case, the city, who has to set the LRTA zones. The county doesn't have authority to set LRTA zones, the school district doesn't have authority to set LRTA zones. But once the city sets the zones, any of the three taxing bodies can approve a LRTA abatement all on their own. But the enabling legislation also allows you to approve it pending approval on another taxing body. So the city has approved this LRTA and other LRTAs in the past all on their own, but with the understanding that they wanted the other taxing bodies to take part. So in the most recent, the city approved theirs, not conditional on any other taxing body, but the school district and county, they both use that method that's allowed to say, we will pass this so long as the other taxing body passes it. And the school district and county did. Now, recently, the county dropped their LRTAs, and because the school was conditioned on the county also having one, the schools fell out. So as of right now, it's only the city that has a LRTA abatement program. The other two don't have to approve a LRTA program. They can, and they can approve it all on their own or conditional on the other taxing body. That's completely up to them.
Well, just to clarify that, the county only repealed their residential LRTA. The school district and the county are still doing the commercial LRTA. It's just the residential that they both dropped out of.
Thanks for that clarification.
Yeah.
I got a question too. I know you and I have spoken briefly about this. Has any of the other jurisdictions reached out about continuing the residential LRTA, or have they been kind of quiet since that article came out online?
I believe that they were both invited to this meeting, the school
Pardon.
district.
Sorry, what was that?
I believe, oh, sorry.
Yeah, they were they both invited, guys? I'm not aware one way or the other.
Yeah, I reached out to the county and to the school district to ask if they wanted to participate in this meeting. I also extended an invitation to Jason Fink of the chamber because he's been pretty vocal about advocating for LRTAs. And I didn't hear back. I mean, I heard back from Jason. He had a conflict. He was in favor of the changes. I kind of ran through a little bit what we were doing, and but I didn't hear back from the county or the school district about wanting to be in on this meeting. And I haven't heard anything from the county about the residential program either.
Yeah, and I have not heard anything, Kevin. Did any of those bodies want to attend the Thursday meeting at all, Scott, where we'll actually be approving the first draft of the ordinance?
I can follow up with
I mean, you could invite them. My guess
Yeah.
would be likely not, but you could mention it to them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Given that would be the approval point, especially, if Jason wants to advocate for LRTAs as a vehicle for economic growth, that would be the time to make his case, really, more than today. So that might be something that would interest him. And speaking of LRTAs as vehicles for growth, sounds like I'm hearing from both community development as well as having heard from Kevin Mackey a couple of weeks ago that the LRTAs really have been a bit of a driver. And even the residential LRTA we've been seeing a decent number of applications for.
Yeah, I believe we have about 9 or 10 active residential LRTAs, the applications that have been reviewed and approved.
Okay. Any idea what the total value of those is?
Well, that's a little hard to say because we know when the LRTA is approved, typically, especially if it's a new build, the number that we see is what the vacant lot is assessed at. So we don't.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you don't get the cost of construction, et cetera, as part of it. Okay. All right. Is there any way it might be helpful to my way of thinking when we discuss this on Thursday to have a round number for something like that. I mean, very round, even if we're just saying, hey, we've seen applications for residential LRTA, that we think are probably valued around $500,000, in terms of real estate improvement in the city. I'm not looking for $451,639.12, but I am saying, that it might be, I have no reason to believe that anybody would object to this passing on Thursday, but I think it would be good to have a conversation about LRTA and the benefit that we've seen from it as long as we're reenacting the ordinance. So I think that might be useful information to have as part of the discussion. Okay. Yes, Kevin?
I was telling Scott I could probably get the revenue that is being abated on that portion of it. And the assessment. It might be a little bit easier for me to grab it just from the tax records and whatnot.
Okay. Yeah, because what I was saying to Kevin a couple of weeks ago is that I haven't paid any attention to this round of LRTA, but previous LRTAs that we've done haven't seemed to me to be super effective as a revenue generator or as like a development generator for the city. So I'm excited to hear that this one is, but then also I think excited to understand the parameters of it and the benefit that we've seen so far.
I can already got the revenue back on it.
Okay.
No more.
Good. Well, thanks. Otherwise, yeah, Nick, I'm not, and Scott, I'm not seeing any changes that look to me like, yeah, I mean, I am excited to see us cleaning up an ordinance that, right, seemed to have a lot of additional information in there that was no longer pertinent to the operation of the ordinance, and I feel as though, frankly, most of the city's ordinances could probably use that kind of work, but I'm glad to see one that's probably more often viewed by taxpayers, getting cleaned up and being a little easier to understand. And Scott, so this round of LRTA expires at the turn of the year. I'm not sure when these guys are set to sunset.
I think 26. I want to say it's 26.
And end of 26.
Yeah.
Got it. All right. So we've got some time then to debate whether or not we're going to move forward on it. And I guess my understanding is that Kevin Mackey, you don't feel as though if the county and the school district aren't participating in the residential, it might not be worth continuing with. But I guess bright side, we've got a year and a half to see whether or not we continue to get applications, even though it's only a citywide benefit, and then evaluate whether or not we want to continue with the residential LRTA program without the other two taxing bodies, if necessary.
I can tell you that the taxpayers that are on this appreciate it.
Okay.
I've had people come into my office that I send right up to Scott, and they have smiles on their face because of the changes and the things that they're signing up for. They don't realize how much more some of these properties are assessed differently.
Okay.
Saving the amount of money on a new build, because some of these new builds are worth $300,000, and they may have only been living in a house with $100,000. So
right.
Change like that, that's you're tripling your tax bill, and for someone to put new money into the city that way, and all the contractors and all the other taxes that come along with that, it's a substantial amount they're saving throughout that period of time.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, yeah. So good. I'm glad to hear that people are excited about the prospect too. That's, I feel like often as a small city in Pennsylvania, you don't have a whole lot of things you can tell people about where it puts them in a good mood. So that's exciting. All right. Any other comments about this item?
I just want to give personal props to Scott for everything that he's doing with this, because I've seen this get used for the past year since he's been here, so more than any of the years I've seen so far. And everyone that comes down after dealing with him comes down with a smile. So thank you, Scott.
That's fantastic.
Thank you.
Scott. Okay. If I'm hearing nothing else on this item, then let's go ahead and move on to the commercial LRTA, to item number 3 on the agenda, which is an ordinance repealing and reenacting a commercial LRTA. And I am sorry about the phone in the background, but unfortunately it will keep ringing and there's nothing I can do about that. Sorry, guys. Scott, you want to add anything you need to add?
It's the exact same thing. I mean, we made almost the exact same changes, cleaning up the commercials. We did the residential. I don't know if Nick has anything else to add about the commercial one, additional, but yeah, it's the same thing.
Yeah, nothing really to add. Like I said, the fee was really the biggest difference between the two. Just the nature of the ordinances. There's some other differences. And then in the termination provision, I did double check. It is the end of 2026 that this ends, unless repealed earlier by council or extended by council. And then, like I said, the permitting process was really the big change here, to give community and economic development a chance to make that easier for people, but also at the right time. Because again, especially with commercial, when you're talking about large builds, if somebody already has the build done and is getting the occupancy permit and then gets a LRTA, then it defeats the purpose for the city, which is to encourage development. These are people who are already developing if they wait till the occupancy permit to apply. And really the purpose of LRTA is to encourage the development, which is why it's meant to be at the time of the building permit. So really the same changes though.
Well, and the other thing I would guess then is somewhat implied as part of this, Nick, is that anybody who would apply for alerta would receive it, right? If you're waiting to apply until you receive the building permit. So this gives us, or to the occupancy permit. So this to me also gives us a little bit more discretion. Do you know what I'm saying? That if we don't feel as though this is a project that should qualify for alerta in some way, I'm not sure exactly what. Are there criteria that would give us the right to deny that?
You really have to follow the ordinance. The ordinance does allow you, if they're not current on their taxes, or with their construction or other permits. So if they have any codes violations, any tax violations, and even if the county and school district don't have alerta, it's in your ordinance that they also get to see the application and say, oh no, this taxpayer is delinquent here, or is in violation of X ordinance that we have. So you do have those options. You can't really say, if you've already designated a zone LERTA and they meet all the other criteria, you can't really say this isn't the kind of construction we want. You don't really have that discretion, but you're right that if somebody has a delinquent tax bill and you wait till they put a $2 million property up expecting to get alerta, it's a lot harder to tell them no at that point than at the start to say, listen, you haven't followed our codes ordinances or tax ordinances or whatever. I'm sorry, you don't qualify for alerta.
Right. Yeah. So it seems right. I think there was just, to me, the ordinance read as a bit of an expectation, like you knew that you met the requirements, and so you simply waited and, right. So I think that this, yes, gives us a little bit more leverage in terms of getting some of those other issues corrected before we provide approval if needed. Good. All right. Any further questions, Randy or Eric? Nothing? Okay.
No.
All right. Then thank you, Nick, very much for attending. I think you can leave. And go back to enjoying your your time
Fishing.
yeah, back to, okay. Thanks. It was really good to see you, Nick.
It's nice to see you guys as well. Take care.
Take care.
All right, and then moving on to the rest of our agenda, I think we'll go back up to item number 1, Jamie Livermore, and take care of the budget report.
Hello, everybody. So this budget report was sent a couple weeks ago. This is as of 6:30. Nothing really crazy or alarming. The tax revenue looks like it's coming in well. We had some surplus sales that we hadn't budgeted for, so that's good, meaning we sold some of our, probably the items that we're purchasing on capital projects. We are selling, the older items, and now that we have a good process for capital projects, we'll probably see that increase each year because we're selling them at a newer time rather than waiting until they have no life left. We also had a jump in building permits. We had budgeted. What's that? Yeah, we budgeted 450,000 for the year. As of the end of this period, we have brought in 783,000. So, I mean, that's a pro. Nothing really in any of the departmental budgets that looks off. So we have Little League coming and the MLB games. So the overtime you'll start to see in the next quarter, probably the overtime will become more than it is so far. So do you guys have any questions for the budget report?
Well, Randy, Eric, anything from you?
I don't have anything at this time.
No, I don't either. I'm sorry.
Well, I was excited to see that building permit jump, Jamie.
Yes, yeah.
Very excited about that. The only questions I had on the other side, I noticed that it looked as though fires overtime was already somewhat over what we would have expected. Police, as I would have expected at the end of June, were at under 50% of their overtime budget and comp time budget expended, but fire was, I think 57% of overtime already.
Yeah,
they have any idea whether
43% left.
Yeah.
I don't, but I can talk to that department before Thursday, and if you have any questions, or I could email you. Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, we don't need to
an
address it on
uptick.
Thursday, but if you could
Yeah.
email me, I guess. I'm trying to remember. It seems to me we budgeted fires overtime pretty tight against what they spent last year, but I don't think we budgeted under
No,
what
we
they
did
spent
not.
last year.
No, I think we did the same.
Okay. Yeah, so yeah, I guess I'm just curious whether that's gonna mean that we're gonna wind up. Because if that repeats itself for the rest of the year, or if, God forbid, I know that police, most of their overtime happens in the summer for a number of reasons. So I was happy to see that they were under the 50% mark at the middle of the year there. Because I know I've seen them out there a lot the last couple of weeks. And, but I wasn't sure whether fire mirrored that or not, whether they also had additional overtime in the summer compared to the rest of the year. I don't know as much about how their overtime kind of happens. And if that's the case, then we're likely to wind up significantly over budget on fire overtime.
I'm getting ready to send out the department budget sheets, so I'll make sure that that's something that I talk to Sam about, maybe even prior to when we start to do our estimated budget sheets for the departments. This is just the preliminary sheets as of the middle of the year preparing for budget. So I can shoot you an email on what he says.
That'd be awesome. Thanks. Yeah. That was kind of, I think that was most of the other things I was wondering. I also appreciated, or I really appreciate the fact that the revenue streams per department are in line with the department in this one. In these interim budget reports, it's not the way that it appears in our budget, but it's kind of nice to have a sense of what revenue is coming in through what department. So the question but because I was kind of then looking at the revenues by department, like it seems as though we've had no street application permits or none as of the end of June. Is that something that usually happens more in the fall?
I feel like last year that was what happened. There is one specific person in the codes departments that handles that, and I feel like it's at the completion of the project, and I believe that from his answer around budget last year was we received that money in the fall more
Okay.
often.
Got it. And then likewise, some of the similar things, like most of the codes income items, and I think even police income items were significantly below the 50% that you would think we would have taken in already. So I wasn't sure whether we also do the bulk of our rental inspections in the fall. I guess what I wanted to know, I wanted to make sure that we were doing rental inspections as we need to be doing every year, because the fact that we only had 82%, or that we've only accrued 18% of the income that we expected to accrue over the course of the year by mid-June would seem to indicate to me that we weren't doing rental inspections at the pace at which we need to.
And that can be something I ask Gary as well, because I mean, with budget coming up, those things will come up as well. So I can shoot you that same email.
All right. Yeah, because I was assuming that number was a steady number predicated on the rental inspections we need to do annually to meet our rental inspection quota for every year in the city. So the fact that it was skewed so far made me wonder if we weren't doing them. But yeah, and I think other than that, everything else seemed relatively in line. I know, Jamie, do you know what generates the miscellaneous police income?
There's multiple things. I would have to go through and take a look at it, but I know there's multiple things. So I think there's some reimbursements that they get for different operations that they do. Sometimes maybe even donations are in a separate account, I believe. So I think it just depends. I think there was a reimbursement for some bulletproof vest or something like that came in. So I can kind of get a breakdown of that for you.
Okay. It's not a big deal. I'm just kind of, I guess I see the snapshots per department of incomes as a bit of a sign of what our departments have been up to so far in the year. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so just kind of curious what's driving some of them. For instance, we appear to have been issuing a bunch of traffic fines locally. Which is probably a positive thing, unless that also means there's an uptick in traffic violations driving that. So just stuff like that. But that's a conversation I can specifically have with the police too. The others were more of a global budget question. Anyway, I think that was sort of all I had. Everything else looked about where I would have expected. Thank you for running this for us, Jamie. And I guess, should we put the next one on a committee agenda like the beginning of October, mid-September?
So I usually try to wait about a week to maybe two into the, so I would say the second meeting into the quarter. So I can, it probably the middle of, yeah.
Okay, or just reach out to Janice and tell
Yeah,
her.
just so that we can make sure that the payroll and everything is all posted to where it needs to be. That just makes it easier if we wait a week or two.
Yeah, no, that makes sense to me. We still have some things hanging out there directly at the end of the quarter. And thank you very much for getting us that projected 26 budget. That will be helpful here moving forward. To start to give us a sense of what we're up against. All right. Randy and Eric, if there was nothing further that you guys wanted to add to that, we can move on.
I just have a couple things. With the codes, we used to get at least quarterly reports on how many inspections there have been. And I think that's fallen by the wayside, but I think it'd be helpful if that could be reinstituted. So I guess I'm speaking broadly to everybody on council as well. And Jamie, would you happen to know if we have a full complement of codes officers?
I do believe so. I believe all the officers we budgeted for are active. Like, we don't have any openings right now, I believe.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'll email Gary about the quarterly reports. You're not looking for a quarterly report in person, right? Randy, you're just saying it would be nice to receive the document.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'll email Gary to follow up on that and see if we can get that process restarted. Because you're right. I do remember seeing those and they have fallen off, I think, since the change of power there. Okay. All right. And aside from that, if I had nothing further, we will move on to the final item on our agenda. And get everybody out of here. Valerie, a resolution authorizing an agreement between the city and the City of Williamsport Redevelopment Authority. Sorry, I was like, what is that? Oh, all right.
Yes, so this agreement would give the Department of Community and Economic Development the authority to do the day-to-day management and administration of the FAIR program, including the amendment or satisfaction of any mortgages or liens associated with that program. So I can just give you a little backstory as to how this originated. We had a homeowner who utilized this program, the owner of a rental who wanted to sell the rental and then maintain the required affordability period that was originally put in the mortgage and give that to the new owner, essentially pass that on. And there was a lot of day-to-day administration work that needed to be done between the owner of the rental and the solicitors and her attorney and all sorts of things that had to happen in association with that. And the actual original mortgage documents were written between her and the RDA, not her and the City of Williamsport, which was making it so that I wasn't able to manage those transactions. So we received help from Skip Memmi on that as the executive director of the RDA, but then the mayor and I met with him and had a conversation about how just for the ease of the program administration and the day-to-day operation and how that would have to take place in the future, it would just make more sense to come up with this agreement. So Nick Grimes actually drafted this and the RDA took it to their board. I attended the meeting. They had no questions or concerns about that, and they have already signed it.
All right. Thanks, Valerie. Randy, Eric, questions?
No, I don't.
Nope. Seems like it's going to make your job a bit easier.
Yes.
Yeah, it does seem like it makes your job a bit easier. So how is it that it originally, I mean, this is a statewide thing, that fair funds are kind of reported as a redevelopment authority?
So my understanding is that the fair funds were given to the city through a subrecipient agreement with the county. We were awarded those funds to manage the program. The Department of Community and Economic Development was awarded those funds for that program.
Right. Yeah, I remember all of that, but I guess what I'm confused about is this is the first time I realized the redevelopment authority was involved in this process at all. So I believe that we've been, generally speaking, administering all of these funds, period, since the inception. So it seems as though we're simply correcting an issue that's existed for a while and nobody acknowledged, correct?
Yes.
But how is it that the redevelopment authority acquired authority over this funding instead of community development to begin with?
I can't answer that.
Okay.
I know that the Department of Community and Economic Development previously had a staffing agreement with the redevelopment authority. Before they had an executive director, we had an agreement in place that, for example, our office manager would do, the notes and the minutes from their meeting. And any work done by the Director of Community and Economic Development was done through a staffing agreement. I don't know that that answers your question as to how they gained authority over this funding. But I know that I checked with Austin Wade about that, and his answer was that the relationship between our department and the RDA is purely contractual, and that the RDA is an agency completely independent from the city, except for that the city appoints their board. So that is why it was important to get this in place, because it's not, I can't just act on behalf of them without this.
Right. No, yeah, I mean, all of that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, this funding, frankly, even predates the arrangement where we were providing staffing to them, I think. I'm confused, but I'll look into it and see if I can figure it out. Just, I guess I'm hoping that we don't have other things like this, where the funding is technically designated for a secondary organization of the city and an authority of the city, and we're dealing with it. But as far as the fair funding goes, how much do we have left?
None.
What do we have out there?
None. We have no money. Correct.
And so the money is all promised at this point. How many projects, when will this fair funding experience sunset, I guess, is what I'm asking. When should all of the projects be in and finished and the reporting done?
The projects are done. The reporting is done. So the only thing that's currently hanging out there really is mortgages on the properties as a result of the affordability period that the city put on the houses when they were worked on. So there are probably 9 or 10 mortgage agreements out there related to the FAIR program. But as far as the actual work being done, the work is done, the program is closed out, everything has been reported to the county.
Got it. And that includes, even because I remember as recently as maybe a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago, sorry, time starts to get fuzzy as I get older, that there was some debate. We had some historic renovation fair funding that hadn't been expended, that we broadened the catchment area for, or we shifted it to another area. So even all of that is expended, even stuff. Okay, good. I mean, that's good to know. I'm just surprised because it seemed like we had a hard time getting all of it allocated initially. All right, good. Are we looking at attempting to get any more funding directed to the city, fair funding?
Actually, we are, and that's one of the reasons why I included Austin Daly on this meeting, because he is now our housing programs manager. So we are actually working in conjunction with our planner, Scott, and the folks at STEP to do a housing needs plan. And we are hoping that, with the new staff that we have on board, once we have that plan completed, that we can go back to the county with an application for probably a slightly different FAIR program, but a program that would better meet the needs of the city.
Well, that's excellent.
To be determined. That application is not yet available from the county, so we have some time to think about that and hopefully get our housing study done and start to have some of those conversations, and hope that potentially they'll consider an application from us in the future.
What housing study are we doing, Valerie?
We're just working with STEP right now to do a housing plan so that we can determine what the priorities are in the city, and then as part of, actually, let Scott talk about this. Let me throw this to the planner.
Okay, all right. So STEP.
I see him smiling there.
So with staff, we're working on just doing some prioritization work. More broadly, we want to look for some DCED funding to do a citywide housing needs study, because it's something that we can make assumptions about what our needs are, like our missing pieces as far as housing stock in the city. But before we start to like really put major dollars into housing programs, I think we need to really look at what we're missing.
Okay.
And that's what we need to be providing.
And the most recent study we did was through Delta, right? About 10 years ago?
Yeah.
Okay. And that demonstrated that we needed additional high-end rental, it seems to me, right? Okay.
Yeah.
But 10 years is probably a long time in terms of planning speak.
Yes, it
Okay.
is. And there have been major changes in the last 10 years, and our demographics are changing, our population is changing. I mean, things that we're seeing with the city, just in general broad strokes, right? Our population is declining, but it's not declining as fast as some of the more rural parts of the county. We're getting significantly younger than the rest of the county too. So we need to look at what people
Anyway, yes.
What?
No, I was just excited to hear you say that. That was all.
They're all getting younger. Yeah.
It mirrored my anecdotal observations around town, but I didn't know that we had actually established that was the case. So that's, I mean, yeah, it's not exciting that we're still losing population, but it is exciting that to the extent that we're gaining population, it's younger, or that the city is skewing younger.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, you were saying, Scott?
But I think that one of the things that, and this is just me going out on a limb and guessing, and this is why I want to do the study, but I get the impression looking at like what we're missing is we have a lot of good like sort of starter homes for people, and we have a lot of higher end nice homes in residential areas where maybe somebody could buy after they're more established, but there's that sort of missing middle step, right? That second, like, you've started on a career, you're going to start a family, you want something a little bigger, a few extra bedrooms, maybe it's got like a nursery room in it, and we're kind of missing that, I think. But that's why that's all guess. That's me going on a limb. That's why I want to do a housing needs study, because if we're going to keep putting money into housing developments of a certain kind, we want to make sure we don't oversaturate ourselves with a certain kind of housing, right? We want to make sure that we have in every neighborhood in the city, all options where any income level, any family size, they can find the type of housing that they're looking for.
Okay. Yeah. No, I think, and I think that we could potentially bolster our younger population by trying to diversify sometimes what some of that housing looks like. I would love to see us invest in some housing out in and around the pajama factory area, because I feel as though that's an area right by a park that really should be seeing a lot of heavy development for like young families. And right now that's not, and we have a lot of that fair funding went into that neighborhood, but if we could build on that, I think that could be a positive thing for the city. Anyway, but yeah, you are right that a study is a lot better than our intuition when it comes down to what we should be doing. So I'm glad to hear it. Sorry, Valerie, I didn't mean to derail your original discussion. I didn't know we had a study underway of anything related to housing. So that's exciting. And then, so once we've completed an initial study with STEP, we'll be moving toward possibly reaching out for further fair funding and possibly a DCED grant as well, Scott, for a larger housing study. Is that my understanding? All right, great. Fantastic. All right, well, I think I've about beat this item to death. Randy and Eric, do you have anything else you'd like to ask questions about?
Nope.
No, I'm good.
Okay, great. Then thank you. That gets us to the end of the agenda for today, with the exception of item number 5, any related items. Does anyone have anything they'd like to introduce before we bring them?
This isn't particularly something that needs to be brought up right now, but I feel like I might as well mention it because it's been beaten a little bit to death. When Jamie Flick is co-sponsoring that memo for the local services tax, I just want to reiterate that if we were able to get that passed, that would generate about $2 million in additional revenue if we set that to the maximum amount, which would be 2/3 of our budgetary deficit for next year.
Yeah. Now, yeah, exactly. Now, just to be clear, Kevin, what is the likelihood of that getting passed so that it could affect next year's budget?
Jamie had good hopes, but hopes in government get a lot more done at elsewhere than actual government.
But as in
hopeful,
the action that he's currently taking could potentially result in something changing before next year. Well, that would be super exciting.
Yes.
We'll cross our fingers.
And then I have one more thing, just because Scott was mentioning the housing study. I'm in talks with Lycoming College to hopefully have them do a business study around here and get a cost benefits analysis, and then provide to Scott and DCED as well as City Council for your guys' information as well.
I think that'd be terrific. Yeah, it's been, I think Delta did the last one of those that we had too, and that was quite a while ago as well. So there's that, all of that would be excellent information to have updated for the city, because I do think, especially post-pandemic, the picture of a lot of that has changed for a lot of municipalities, and especially Williamsport. And I continue to hope that we can find a way to begin attracting some of those people who are remote workers. I don't know that we've been that successful with that so far, but maybe looking at the issue in a bit more depth will help us capture that. Okay. All right. If I hear no further related items, I will see everybody on Thursday. Okay.
Sounds good. Yeah.
All right. Sounds great. Thank you very much, guys.
Take care.
Bye-bye.